Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're calling in from today. Welcome to Talented Learning's weekly webinar series on all things extended enterprise. Today's topic is how social is your learning management system, and we'll get right on with it. Today's agenda, we'll do just a quick second and introduce ourselves and myself and the company. Then we're going to give a quick overview on what social learning is and how that translates to social learning technology. Then we'll talk about the five different types of social learning management systems. We're going to integrate some YouTube videos that I found in researching for the presentation to show you examples of what we're talking about from different vendors. And we'll give you a quick best tips in selecting your own social learning management system. And in the question box on the side of your screen, you have the ability to ask questions. I will check those at the end of the presentation and answer any questions that we have. If we start to run past the half-hour point, I will respond personally with email answers to any questions that you did have if we didn't get to them. So feel free to ask away. This is an exciting topic. So who is Talented Learning? So we're pretty new. We were founded at the first of the year in 2014, and we founded ourselves as an extended enterprise learning technology news, research, and consulting firm. And basically what that means is that there's lots of places to go on the internet and on LinkedIn that discuss learning technology, e-learning, learning management systems, but nowhere to go that really focuses on extended enterprise learning. And that's the learning and technology that's targeted towards your non-employees, your sales channel and distribution channel, manufacturers, customers, users, members. All these folks are voluntary users. And as a result, learning technology needs to be modified to work more from a voluntary standpoint versus a mandatory standpoint of internal employees. At Talented Learning, we're independent analysts. We are not affiliated with any of the LMS providers, and so that allows us to do our job better of researching mobile and social and authoring and gamification technology, and translating that into a language that people that run extended enterprise learning can understand and focus on without always worrying about talent management and the things of internal employees. We have a weekly webinar here on Thursdays at 1 o'clock, and we also release a weekly blog on all things extended enterprise. I'm the CEO, John Lay, and lead analyst of Talented Learning. I co-founded Talented Learning. I have 18 years experience in LMS and e-learning. I got a master's degree originally in instructional technology, spent the first 5 years or so of my career as a doer in creating and project managing e-learning projects targeted at the extended enterprise of the telecommunications sales channel. And then I spent 13 years for the LMS providers selling and leading sales teams in selling high-end extended enterprise learning management systems. And I founded Talented Learning as a way to give back to the community and help buyers cut through the mess of thousands or hundreds rather of LMS providers and be able to identify good providers based on their requirements. So what is social learning? People learn through observation, imitation, and modeling. That is how you start learning as a child. That's how you learn in school. That's how you learn by watching your parents. This could be active, somebody actually working with you and getting you to model and imitate, but it also happens passively just by watching other people's behaviors or watching TV. And social learning is the process of participating with others to learn new things. So it's not just by yourself reading a book or taking a self-paced e-learning class, but it's interacting in some way, passively or actively, in real time or in staggered time with other people so that you can learn. And social media, of course, enables users to create and share their own contact and to network with each other. And social media has been around for years. Social learning has been around even longer than that. But the social learning technology, or the LMS, combines it all together. It brings it into one place. the social media and the social learning environment, and then provides the opportunity for tracking and reporting of those social interactions, as well as integrating social interactions into the classroom or into e-learning activities, either on a mandatory or a voluntary basis, to be able to get more information or to develop your thoughts or to formalize the skill in your mind. And so that begs the question, wonderful, so we need a learning management system for social learning technology. So what type of learning management systems are there? And so if you were on my presentation webinar last week, you would have learned that there's 600 different types, or rather different learning management systems globally. That number continues to rise, and they're made up of a variety of different types. The talent suites are the real big ones that belong to like SAP and Oracle. So they're integrated into broader HR suites. And then there's the standalone LMSs, like there always have been, that aren't focused on talent management or performance management, but are focused on the aspects of learning and learning technology for both the extended enterprise and for internal employees. So they provide one solution, usually cross industries, that support the different audience groups. And then there's the cloud LMSs, and a cloud LMS can go by any other name or many other names, including gamified LMSs, e-commerce LMSs, extended enterprise LMSs, mobile LMSs, even mobile LMSs are all grouped into this cloud LMS category, and they're the new LMSs that have arrived in the marketplace, and they're the ones that have a lot of social learning integrated automatically into them since they are fresh and new LMSs. And then there's the industry LMSs that are focused just towards targeted solutions for any particular industry, and then functional LMSs that focus on providing a specific function, like content LMSs or LMSs for continuing education, or an LMS just for your customers or just for your channels. And so when you look and you research at all these LMSs, you say, what, there's no social LMS in all this? And I believe, though you'll hear other points of view in the industry, I believe there is no such thing as a social LMS, because I believe that social learning is a feature set and not the LMS itself. Social learning technology integrated in an LMS, I believe, is no different than what you see from instructor-led training feature set or virtual training feature set, or being able to support different types of online learning. I think it's a tool in the bag of LMSs to now allow groups or some groups the ability to integrate the social learning and social media aspects into the course curriculums. And I come to this point of view from doing my Talented Learning LMS reviews. So I talk to executives from countless LMS providers across the world, and I learn business strategy, and I also get into the products and review them from a technical and a functional standpoint. And what I found is that all the LMSs have social learning capabilities. So it's hard to just break out one group and say, hey, this is their top 10 social learning. So that's important as we get into the presentation here and we look at the different types of learning management, or rather social learning levels inside of learning management, regardless of what one of those groups that they're on. So why social learning? Let me click back over here. So from an employee standpoint, boy, that's a hard one. I don't have a great answer for that. I sold, as I mentioned, LMSs for 13 years. Now I'm independent, but I sold for 13 years, and in that time I saw lots and lots of clients implement social learning modules for their internal employees, but the programs always collapsed under their own weight in reality, because there needed to be fresh content on there all the time, and interaction with the students, and how much time do you want your employees actually doing this at work and socializing and chatting and sharing versus just working. And it also depends on what industry you're in, of whether this is realistic or not. And then there's the question of measurement, and is it actually changing behaviors from an employee standpoint? And I think all of those things are debatable, and you can line up 100 experts and find 50 on either side of the argument here that says it's hype or reality on whether it works for internal employees. I think it remains to be seen, and I think a lot of organizations haven't figured it out, and as a result, it's something on the roadmap, but they don't want to be on the very cutting edge of this, and they certainly don't want to invest hours of their employees' time focusing on social learning, unless there is, of course, that transfer of knowledge, that one group where the baby boomers are retiring, they've got all this knowledge in the head, and you're trying to solicit that out and trying to get that into a social platform, so to speak, so that the younger generation can benefit from that knowledge. And that's an argument that's out there that I do believe in a minor way. But the other side of the equation is the extended enterprise, all those users that are not your employees, but are the voluntary users that interact with your organization. And I think social learning makes a lot of sense for this group of building a community of your users or buyers of your solution. Can't be anything but good if you have a decent solution, because you'll be able to share information, you'll be able to share updates, you'll be able to solicit feedback, you'll be able to grow your brand and extend out into global areas that you would never be able to do. You'll be able to have your extended enterprise community, your social learning community, actually answer questions for other users. So you can reduce your costs of customer support by letting your customers do the work, and they want to do the work because they're vested inside the community and inside of the particular group tied to your organization. And so I think there's a lot of benefits. I still think it's hard to measure social learning and the actual impact of that, but without a doubt, with a voluntary group to be able to interact together and be able to communicate with them quicker, it just can't do anything but good for your brand and for your opportunity to sell content, which is the point of extended enterprise training and how social learning can tie to it. But here's a tip. If you can't articulate why you need social learning, you don't need social learning. It seems pretty simple, but I worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients over those 13 years of selling LMSs where social learning was a mandatory requirement, but that next step of who's going to use it and how you were going to use it and how you were going to maintain it was somewhere off in that foggy distance, and you can waste a lot of money buying something that you don't need. And so if you can't define it, you don't need it. So what are the 4 levels of social LMSs? These are all my own designations based on those LMS reviews. They could probably have better names, but there's the introverts, there's the minimalists, they are the integrators, there are the integrators, and there's also the extroverts feature sets. And so what I did in reviewing all the LMSs, and I review LMSs, I review YouTube videos, I read manuals, and I get my arms around what every vendor can do in all these different categories of functionality, including social, and then together, and then I try to make some sense of them and put them into groups or levels and just analyze what's out there, because if you look at 500 or 600 LMSs, it's impossible to get your head around exactly what feature sets are standard or not. So I spent a lot of time, probably too much time doing that, but that's how I derived the different groups here. So the introverts, I place myself in this category in real life. Wise man once said nothing. It was always one of my favorite proverbs. My other ones from Mark Twain says, better to appear stupid than open your mouth and remove all doubt. 2 different maxims that I live my life by, but LMSs are similar in that regard, in that there's lots of LMSs still out there that don't have any social features. If your LMS is industry specific, for example, in the mining industry or the pulp and paper industry, there's lots of competitors in all these different industry segments. You're probably not generating a whole lot of social learning content, and so a lot of the old school LMSs are also in this boat where they've been talking about LMS feature or social learning features, but their clients aren't banging down their doors, and there's a million different things that you can build in an LMS. And so there's a whole group of LMSs that are holding off until they see whether it sticks or how it sticks or who figures out how to make it stick the best, and then they'll rush in and copy that. They believe, the introverts believe, that social learning is hype. They're the older generation. They're also the generation of LMSs that are geared towards the administrator, and the end users were an afterthought. And I think all the old-time LMSs came at it from this perspective, since they started out as really training management systems. and eventually end user access via the web was an added-on feature from the original ones. And so there's a lot of that inside out versus looking at it from an end user standpoint in. I think it's a checkbox requirement. It's hard to find an RFP for learning management systems that are not talking about social learning, at least in one section, because they believe they may want to do it in the future. But it is really a checkbox requirement. I found lots of organizations say yes, social learning, and we say yes, or the former organizations said yes. And then did they ask the next question of, what are all the different types and features and functions that you have? Only about 25% of the time. The other 75% of the time, it was a quick and done affair. So I think there's a lot of demand out there for introvert LMSs, believe it or not. The second type of LMSs are the minimalists. And the minimalists are LMSs that still don't believe in social learning, but they plugged it into their system just so they could check box those requirements. LMS vendors for over a decade have had these minimalist type of social learning capabilities. We call them threaded discussion groups, frequently asked questions. They were a way back in the day to extend the learning out of the classroom. So you would have a classroom event, even before e-learning in many ways, but you'd have a classroom event, and you want to get those teachers, or trainers rather, and students still in a group that interacts through time so that you can get questions answered and actually impact your performance on the job. And so these feature sets were introduced into LMSs. They are in a separate place in the LMS, so they're not integrated into the core workflow. You typically have to go to a section to collaborate with somebody. They're very lightly used. As I said previously, I've seen so many organizations buy it and never unwrap it, just sitting on the shelf. And participation in the social learning activities of working with those activities isn't tracked by the LMS at all. So the LMS houses it. It's kind of like an umbrella housing content, but it's not caring, or the LMS doesn't care whether you actually consumed or answered a question or did anything like that. And what are these minimalist features? They're like things like RSS feeds, billboards, what's new, announcements. It includes a lot of the notification engine, the push notifications, and text messages are a little bit more modern, but email notifications of one sort. But it's typically one-way push communication, though the discussion boards and threaded discussions do provide some two-way, but it is more self-paced or asynchronous versus synchronous type communication. A lot of people call them collaboration groups. You typically hear them being structured around things like classes or courses or topics or expertise, and they're used in that manner. So I'm going to try something tricky here. If it doesn't work, raise your hand with the audio. But I want to hop over to YouTube here and just show an example of communities of interest and what this looks like. For those of you that don't get to see a lot of LMSs, this is publicly available information. Just about every LMS vendor, to one degree or another, has YouTube videos up of their products. And it's a good way to, without interacting with the vendor as you're going through your research cycle of looking at learning management systems, to go ahead and research without talking to a salesperson. So hang on one second.
Topics has 7 levels of community. We have site level, subject, program, course. So depending on the communities your learners are involved with, site communities, subject, course, and in this case, this learner belongs to user group community. And they can pop directly into their community from here. You're able to have a bit of information about the community so people are able to see this. And once you're in a community area, Topics has lots of things. You can turn on and off the functionality here depending on what is appropriate for your site. So the first area we see is the shout box. This is very similar to the wall on Facebook if you're familiar with that. So this is the wall for this particular course. I can come into community events, the forum area, photos. I have polling turned on this site. If other people were online right now, I would be able to easily see who was viewing this community. Articles, documents, blogs, these are all functionality that are available in the topics community area.
Okay, so that was just an example of and by the way, these examples aren't good or bad. I'm truly indifferent to them, just showing what's out there in terms of how it looks. But if you noticed in that particular example, to get to these communities of interest, you did have to pan up on the right-hand side, find a new menu structure, and go choose to interact. And certainly that can be effective, but it is different than some of the other levels here where they're integrated more tightly into the workflow. And one of those is what we call the Integrator LMSs, or what I call the Integrator LMSs. And they're the ones that decide to connect versus build. And they have the philosophy that there's already too many, and I'm of this philosophy, I believe, that there's already too many social networks to pay attention to. You know, by the time I get up in the morning and I do my Facebook and my LinkedIn and my Twitter and my Google Plus and all the other ones I have to do to maintain our business here, and I'm really tired of going to all those. And so there's another whole tier of social networks that I belong to, but I just don't even have time to check. And so the social LMSs, the Integrator social LMSs, I believe have that same point of view. And so they decided to just connect or link with their APIs to existing social networks and be able to leverage them. And those social networks could be the corporate social networks like Yammer or Bloomfire, or more commonly they can be the open or rather the public social networks using a standard they call Open Social that allows you to link in to LinkedIn and Twitter, Google Plus, and SharePoint, Facebook, and really any social network. And the integrated products, unfortunately, because they are integrated, have a different user interfaces, so there is some disconnect. So it's not as tightly woven as we'll see in the next example, but it provides, because social networks already have the ability to all the functionality of the social media. They typically have all the bells and whistles, so you can leverage LinkedIn and get the advantage of the whole LinkedIn network and your contacts inside of there and posting in groups and walls, or you can create a group, especially around your extended enterprise, in LinkedIn and build that in a neutral place like LinkedIn, but still leverage it in the LMS. And so I think it has a lot of applicability. It doesn't cost anything. It's real easy to connect from a technology standpoint, and the organization doesn't have the burden of making people always get back into the LMS. And in some ways, that's a nice way to lighten the load from a burden feature. Just to show you some features that are included in this, it's things like logging in and single sign-on that I believe are the most important. We've all seen it when you go to a site and they say log in with your Twitter or your Facebook credentials. You know, that's an example of this, so that you don't have to go through the hassle of redefining everything. At the same time, that comes with its own concerns that you're providing some third-party network too much access. At least that's what I'm always worried about. But it allows you also to post course enrollments and completions on these news feeds. It allows you to leverage the contacts that you have and to invite people to take content. It also allows you to share ratings and reviews of content and display the gamification, badges, and awards and levels and points that you achieve for consuming content or finishing content, and also interacting with the learning management system. So those are the things that integrators bring to the table. Let's try again here, and since I didn't, let me look to see if I got any complaints. If there is any complaints, raise your hand, but I'll try it again here and just show a real quick how MindFlash and Yammer integrate.
Using Yammer with a MindFlash application allows you to easily invite your Yammer users, send private messages to users about courses, post course links in your Yammer feed, and have notifications of course completion in your activity stream. Trainees will also be able to post about their course success in their Yammer feed. The home screen is where you can get an overview of all of your courses, Customize your portal with your logo.
Okay, and so that just gives you just a quick example of how they're tying those two together from two different product standpoints. The last thing to mention on why LMS vendors do this is maybe it's not so much about what I mentioned, but it's more about that they can save all the research and development costs and just let social kind of ride out on the side so you see what happens. And I think that's maybe a fair second reason why organizations do this. As always, on these 30-minute webinars, I seem to have too much content, so we'll slide in these last couple slides quickly here in the minutes that we have. Please go ahead and continue to ask questions. The Extrovert, the social LMS. So these are the best systems in terms of social learning. And the reason I think they're the best is that they integrate very tightly with the workflows. So there is no line. There's no separate place to go to. The social learning and gamification and what learning and training you're taking and searching for are all integrated into the same user interface. And you can turn off certainly the social aspects, but then the LMS would really be lacking, or at least in the best social LMSs. They really have a core competency and focus on it, and they want organizations to be in that 25% that have specific social learning criteria, whether that is in the standalone or the talents. And this the social learning can be delivered through apps or directly through the LMS, and it has all the things. It basically recreates the popular social networks. So there's things like user profiles and your pictures and friending and following each other and LinkedIn, and it's all the things that we're used to. You can tag content, and as a result, there's things like popular content and highly rated content, and your friends have taken this content, so we recommend that to you. And it's just recreating a lot of what's out there in the public networks. The advantage is that it's inside your LMS. The disadvantage, as we mentioned with the connectors, is that there's a lot of heavy lifting to start a new social network that you want to get people to check as religiously as they check some of their more personal Facebook and LinkedIn ones. If you think you can do that and you have a large enough user group and you have content that's fresh enough and a community that requires that level of interaction, then you want to look for an Extrovert, I believe, LMS or Extrovert LMS capabilities, social LMS capabilities versus just the connectors. They also have things, more advanced things like web conferencing, capturing chats, better ways to solicit content from users, to have them post their own content, rate content, even do things like we're doing right now, capturing virtual webinars or sound clips and using all those different medias. There's social dashboards for all users, learner-generated content. So other than the connectors that just use the reporting or lack of reporting of the public social engines, once you incorporate it into an LMS like the Extroverts do, then you can make it be part of curriculums or part of courses that they're required to do. Tie gamification to it so you actually drive behavior, leaderboards, and points and levels based on how much you socially interact. We're running out of time, so we'll skip that, but one thing to Google is Saba's People Quotient, which is a nice way they have of showing social media how it's integrated and measuring every aspect of it, and it's something that you can't do, as I said, from the public networks. So in conclusion here, as we slide into the half-hour mark, if you can't define why social learning, you don't need it. And the cutting edge is the bleeding edge. And so it's been a decade now, of course, that social learning's been out there in learning technology, but I still believe it's the cutting edge. You can spend a lot of time, effort, and money to develop a social learning program, but you better be sure that it's having a measurable impact on your business. And you better be sure also that you can drive users to that and they're going to find value into that. And how do you get sure on that? You start small and you build around different user groups or populations, and you don't try to be all things to all people at once, because this is a lot of trial and error, and it can spend a lot of money. And when they do fall flat, and I've seen so many social learning efforts fall flat, if a user goes to your network and there's no information a first time, and they go a second time there's no new information, or even a third time, there's not going to be a third time or a fourth time. And then you have a ghost town, a social media ghost town, and there's probably more of those than thriving communities. Always start with that measurable business case, and if you do need an LMS, don't just look for a social LMS. Define what social features you need as well as the rest of your functional features, technical, professional service, and even business requirements, and look holistically at the marketplace through the lens of those 5 types of requirements and not just through one feature set. And for goodness sakes, don't skip the RFP. Last thing real quick, talent and learning service offerings. What we do for organization is we help organizations do technology audits. We do a lot of looking at your existing learning technology infrastructure and ecosystem and benchmarking that, comparing it to other organizations in your industry, and giving you some serious recommendations and feedback on where you're sitting, including on how much you're paying to maintain your current solution. The second thing that we do is we help organizations cut through all the marketing and fluff and find the right LMS partner by doing those things that we just mentioned of defining the business case, defining the measurable ROI before we're starting, and being very specific on what type of requirements we need for our different user groups, and helping you manage the RFP process and select a vendor. And finally, for vendors, we help them from the other aspect of understanding or auditing their learning technology, and also auditing their roadmap and providing recommendations and guidance. So that's what we do as an organization. Thanks for attending today. There's a lot of different ways that you can get a hold of me. We ask that you please follow our blog at talentedlearning.com. Our blog is our website, and hopefully it's interesting and frequent enough to keep you coming back to our community. And of course, we're very active on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you can just reach out specifically via email. So thank you very much for your continued attendance. Next week we're going to talk more specifically about trading your LMS in and getting a new extended enterprise learning management system. We hope to see you there. Thank you.